So in our last explainer, we really defined what covert narcissism is. But today, we're going to go deeper. We're going to get into the trenches. We're going to explore where this pattern does its most intimate and its most painful damage, right there in our families, in our workplaces, and really try to understand that heavy, invisible weight it leaves behind. So, let's get started.
You know that feeling, right? It's a kind of exhaustion that just defies words. A deep emotional drain, like you're constantly walking on eggshells around someone, but you can't for the life of you figure out exactly why. Well, I'm here to tell you that feeling, it is not your imagination. It's actually a really critical clue, and today, we're gonna follow it.
All right, here's our game plan. We'll start in that inner circle, the home, and then we'll branch out to the workplace. After that, we're gonna dig into the psychological why. What's really going on behind this behavior. We'll uncover why it's so hard to change, and most importantly, we'll talk about a path forward so you can start reclaiming your own reality.
So let's start where the wounds are often the deepest, the family. This is really the crucible, It's where these patterns are forged and where the damage can be the most profound.
Imagine a childhood that's just steeped in sighs and complaints. You have a parent who is always the victim, always wronged by somebody, by something, by the world. For a kid, that is an incredibly confusing environment. And what it does is it breeds this chronic, unshakable guilt. This feeling that somehow you are the source of their endless unhappiness.
So now let's say you achieve something. You succeed. What happens? Instead of pride, you get jealousy. You get a passive-aggressive comment, just like this one. And a comment like that, it has a very specific job. It immediately puts the focus back on their supposed hardships. Your big moment of triumph? It just got hijacked and turned into another chapter in their story of victimhood.
And this, right here, this locks you into a devastatingly predictable cycle. You succeed, and it triggers their envy. That envy then fuels some kind of remark that just cuts you down. And what are you left with? The emotional fallout. Guilt, confusion. You're basically programmed to feel that your own success is a personal attack against them.
Oh, this one is a classic. A textbook example of projection. What they're doing is taking their own bottomless need for attention, their own fear of being overshadowed, and they're just plastering it right onto you. The goal is simple, really. Shrink your accomplishment, make you feel small at the very moment you have every reason to feel proud.
And this is the painful legacy of it all. That external critic you grew up with, it becomes the internal saboteur in your adult life. It shows up as self-sabotage in your career and inability to actually enjoy your own success because that critical parent's voice, it's been completely internalized. It's now your own.
Okay, so now let's switch gears and see how this same pattern moves from the home into the workplace. The stage is different, but you'll see, the script is hauntingly familiar. We all know what an ideal teammate looks like, right? They're collaborative, they're supportive. Well, the covert narcissist is the exact opposite of that. They are that sullen, resentful presence, that dark cloud in the office who is always criticizing what everyone else does, all while not really pulling their own weight. And these behaviors, they're like a slow poison for any team. They just refuse to collaborate, they think team building is silly, and they're always operating from this place of paranoia. But maybe the most disruptive thing they do is weaponize every little perceived slight, threatening to file grievances, always casting themselves as the workplace martyr. It just gums up the works for everyone.
And make no mistake, this is not just some personality clash. This is a bottom line issue for a company. This kind of behavior completely dismantles team morale, it drains productivity, and honestly, it creates huge legal and financial risks for any organization that has to deal with it.
So where does all of this come from? This deep, profound sense of victimhood? What's the origin story? To really get the behavior, we have to trace it all the way back to its psychological source.
So often, it follows this really common and tragic path. It all starts with a childhood of feeling invisible, of not being noticed. Then, that gets layered with the shame and insults of adolescence. And eventually, it just hardens into this chronic resentment we see in adulthood.
At the heart of it, the core wound is this desperate, unmet need to just be seen. This often happens when you have parents who are just deeply distracted, maybe emotionally detached, or even openly unkind and shaming. So that victimhood that we see in the adult, it's really just a distorted echo of that childhood search for validation that never came.
And this brings us to one of the trickiest parts of all of this, the challenge of treatment. Because this pattern, it is a master of camouflage. It is exceptionally good at hiding in plain sight.
This is what a lot of therapists call the treatment trap. So the person comes in and they look like they have depression or maybe anxiety. And a well-meaning therapist starts treating those symptoms. But it's like treating the smoke while the fire, the underlying personality issue, is just raging on, completely untouched.
So you end up with this really deceptive split. The mask they show the world, and their therapist, is one of sadness and anxiety. But the engine that's actually driving the whole system, the thing that's hidden underneath, that's something else entirely. It's chronic victimhood, it's contempt, and it's this deep, powerful sense of entitlement.
And this confusion is exactly what leads you to gaslight yourself. You see their supposed suffering and you immediately turn the blame inward. You think, am I the problem here? Am I not being supportive enough? You end up completely exhausting yourself trying to fix a mood disorder that isn't even the real issue, while that core bitterness just remains because it was never really about depression in the first place.
So, with all this complexity, what on earth is the path forward if you're dealing with this? Well, it starts with something I call radical validation.
The very first, most critical step is this: your perception is real. That exhaustion you feel is not in your head, it is a healthy, sane response to a chronically unhealthy situation. You have to trust your reality.
Second, and this is so important, we have to completely reframe what boundaries are. They are not an act of aggression. They are not selfish. In a dynamic like this, boundaries are an act of emotional survival. Think of them as the essential guardrails for your mental health.
Ultimately, this is the goal. It's not about changing them, because you can't. It's about reclaiming your own emotional freedom. It's about no longer letting their internal world dictate the weather in yours.
Look, understanding all of this is the first step, but taking action, that's liberation. So I want to leave you with a challenge, not just a question. What is one small, concrete boundary you can set today to start taking back your space and taking back your peace?